Thank you very much. See, there's still a few people to come back from coffee, but there are some very good conversations going out there, and if we're a little bit late starting, it's probably slightly my fault, because I was in one of those conversations. I'm very honoured to be asked to moderate this session today. For me, this seminar is a confluence of several important strands that I've followed throughout my career. 21 years ago, I was working on ASEAN. That was my very first job in the Foreign Ministry. And even 21 years ago, it seemed to be a remarkable institution with a tremendous future. And it's been extraordinary to watch what's happened in that time. And it will be extraordinary, I know, to watch the next 10 years and see where we get to be in 2025. It's a confluence of OECD, where I was privileged to be the Deputy Permanent Representative for some years. And I recall at that time the proposal of Mr. Nikai that an OECD for Southeast Asia, or for East Asia, be established. And at the time it seemed like a remarkably good idea, and it is delightful to see that it has come to fruition and proved to be so very, very strong. And so now that I'm here in Jakarta, I have the privilege of meeting the staff and the organisation of ERIA and being able to work with them. You know, in every job there are some easy bits and some hard bits. And one of the easy bits in my job is writing to my head office in Wellington and saying, oh, we need to get some more money for ERIA, because they don't actually question me very much. We were convinced right from the beginning that ERIA was something that was worth supporting. And now every year people just sort of tick off. Of course we'll keep supporting. We're very, very pleased with the work that ERIA is doing. We are convinced of its value for informing regional integration, and that's something that we'll continue to support. So we see today as a celebration of the vision of Mr. Nikai, the leadership of Professor Nishimura, and of the OECD Secretary General, ERIA. Now this panel is looking forward to 2025, 10 years after the birth of the ASEAN community. And our speakers today are bringing three different complementary perspectives on the ASEAN community. First of all, we'll have Dato Hasnudin Hamzah. Now, Dato Hasnudin is the permanent representative of Malaysia to ASEAN here in Jakarta, and has an extremely serious and important job this year, because if we say that the ASEAN community is being born at the end of the year, then Malaysia is the midwife. And as I think a lot of people were looking at a certain royal birth a couple of days ago in London, which proved to be very easy. We trust that this one also will be very easy and successful. So we'll be hearing from Dato Hasnudin about how things are going, where we are with the state of play for the birth of the ASEAN community. Next we'll have Dr. Ponciano Intal. Now Dr. Intal is from ERIA, as most of you all know, and will bring the academic, the economist perspective. And although we think of ERIA as being economic, of course it's economic is everything, and it's a very comprehensive community that's being established. And I did love actually that comment earlier, a community of opportunities. Fabulous way to describe ASEAN, I think. So Dr. Intal can talk about not only the economic community, but also the socio-cultural community and the work that ERIA's been doing on that. And finally we have Dr. Alexander Chandra. Now, amongst other things, Dr. Chandra is Executive Director of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, and so can bring a business perspective on the ASEAN community. And we'll be very interested to hear from him what business thinks, how it's feeling about the community, where it sees it's going. I'd like to now hand over to Dato Hasnudin Hamzah. Tell us about progress towards establishing the community at the end of this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Good morning to all excellencies, and especially Professor Nishimura for having me here in this symposium. I wish I can be the midwife in a different time. Well, friends, I think ASEAN today must be the most topical subject. You know, that is getting on everybody's head. Conversation is everywhere. Expectations, challenges, and whatever else, you know, that comes with ASEAN, especially when it comes to the end of 2050, when the ASEAN community is officially proclaimed and established. But let me put the question to all of you. Let us reflect. How and why ASEAN has come to what it is today? This is a very simple question. And I think the answer is very close to all of us. The achievement over the last 4 decades or so was made possible due largely to the concerted effort and support of the leaders, the people and the stakeholders who see the virtue and benefits of ASEAN as a regional organization. And more importantly, directly or indirectly, all of us have willingly embraced the vision and aspirations of the ASEAN founding fathers to bring the diverse South Asia together. I think this is the most important message that one can take away from this symposium. Despite the diversity that we have, we know we want to bring ASEAN together. And one of the way forward, thanks to the founding fathers, thanks to the foresight of our leaders, they have agreed to establish ASEAN community by the end of 2050. So that itself is a historical milestone. ASEAN will reach a significant high point come 31 December 2015, marking the transformation of ASEAN, leapfrogging into a new era of regional integration. Who would have thought that ASEAN would be able to move into that stage with all the challenges, with all the uncertainties that ASEAN is facing? So that is, I think, one of the success stories that we have to bear in mind when we talk about ASEAN. What will be achieved with the establishment of ASEAN Community 2050? Two main points that come to my mind. Of course, this is not exhaustive, there may be others. One, it will be a deeper and wider regional integration that will enable ASEAN to compete more effectively through the active involvement of all sectors and stakeholders in the works of ASEAN. Secondly, a higher standards of living and swifter social progress for ASEAN peoples. This will be including through better access to healthcare, as well as the basic and advanced education, and many other things that once ASEAN becomes a more affluent region. We all know that ASEAN has about 625 million people, and this itself is also a positive thing because it will have to create that economies of scale. When we talk about ASEAN, people always think it is ASEAN economic community. ASEAN economic community is the big part of the grand design. We have the three pillars, as we all know, And underpin those three pillars, the most important is the people. I think ASEAN is blessed with young population, educated, and that will have to be nurtured. And because of that, Malaysia, as the chair of this year, put strong emphasis on a people-centered ASEAN, focusing to be an inclusive ASEAN that should represent the diverse strata of the society in the region. And the realization of a community also means that the people, as I said, will be the greatest asset of ASEAN. So when we think about ASEAN in the next 10 years, in 2025, what is the best way to realize that objective? It is to ensure that the people be given the required tools, the capacity to move ASEAN forward. And I think ERIA and now OECD will have a big responsibility to make sure that the peoples of ASEAN will benefit from your research work, from your recommendations, because government alone probably will not be adequate to ensure the realization of the ASEAN community. What I'm saying is simply that the establishment of the community will necessitate the involvement of all sectors of society, especially the private sectors, the CSOs, in the central issues affecting ASEAN of today and maybe the next 10 years, such as good governance, transparency, higher standards of living, sustainable development, empower women, and greater opportunity for the people. This has been touched, I think, briefly by the earlier panels, and I'm not going to dwell on that in greater detail. But I believe as a community, ASEAN will play and will have a more active and constructive role in global affairs whilst maintaining the ASEAN centrality. ASEAN Community 2015 is not an end to itself. It is a continuous process. As I said earlier on, it is being underpinned by the three pillars: ASEAN Political Security Community, ASEAN Economic Community, ASEAN Social Cultural Community. And overall, I think about 93% of all the action lines under the three ASEAN community have been implemented. And hopefully, before the year ends, the remaining action lines would be completed. So in other words, we are saying ASEAN is moving on the right trajectory to further strengthen ASEAN unity and deepen ASEAN integration. This is to strengthen the realization of a politically cohesive, economically integrated, and socially responsible for a truly people-oriented, people-centered, and rules-based ASEAN. During Malaysia's chairmanship this year, we are basically looking at two main goals. One is to ensure the implementation of the remaining action lines as contained in the blueprints, and how best to conclude the roadmap for an ASEAN community as touched by Dr. Mokhtar earlier on. We are working on the post-2050 documents and the attendance documents. We have established 8 priorities under Malaysia's chairmanship, in addition to the 2 above. One is to steer ASEAN closer to its people. As I said, Malaysia's overarching theme for its chairmanship is people-centered ASEAN. It simply means that Malaysia will work very hard towards providing more opportunities for greater engagement with stakeholders. The emphasis on the people is to achieve the goal of greater ASEAN political, economic and social integration, and through this to ensure the life of these people are lifted. A people-centered ASEAN is where our citizens feel not just as being part of ASEAN, but where they embrace the feeling that they are ASEAN and its future is their future. In an effort to create the ASEAN, we are ASEAN feeling, leaders have interfaced with youth, civil society organizations, business groups, parliamentarians during the 26th ASEAN Summit held in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia on 27-28 April. So this is the ongoing process that have been undertaken by the leaders to ensure that the voices of these groups of people or this segment of society are heard and be taken into account in the policies of ASEAN today. But more importantly, from Malaysia's perspective, the people-oriented, people-centered ASEAN must work for the benefit of our citizens both at home and internationally. A strong united ASEAN that is friendly and neutral provides the framework for the maintenance of regional peace and stability. And Malaysia, to that end, advocated for the promotion of peace and stability in the region through moderation. The 26th ASEAN Summit adopted the Langkawi Declaration on the Global Movement of Moderates, which comprehensively outlines the philosophy of moderation, which is an established ASEAN value in all its dimensions. I think this is also something that will have to be underpinned very strongly when we move towards 2025 or the next 10 years when ASEAN community is established. I'm not going to touch on the ASEAN economic community and its process because the expert is here. But let me emphasize one more point in which Malaysia has placed great importance during our chairmanship. This is on the development of the SMEs, the small and medium enterprises. We all know that SMEs constitute about more than 95% of the industries in the region. And Mr. Chandra had elaborated very clearly earlier on in his presentation about the importance of the OECD contribution to SMEs. So I hope this also will be continued vigorously by ERIA and OECD in helping SMEs in ASEAN. In conclusion, I just want to highlight a couple of points. First, the success of the ASEAN community in the next 10 years will depend largely on our commitment to ensure that the political and economic gains that we have achieved thus far be further consolidated to serve the people and the region so as to bring the intended benefits. That is the complete integration of the ASEAN region. ASEAN community building is a Herculean task. As ASEAN is entering a new chapter in its history, we must be optimistic. We cannot be pessimistic because the leaders have committed themselves, and all of us have the responsibility to make sure that we will be able to progress towards realizing greater integration and interconnectivity. The foundation has been laid out, and the continued mobilization of resources from every sector of society is essential in ensuring the ASEAN framework, mechanisms, and institutions are fully functioning, as I said, to support a politically cohesive, economically prosperous, socially resilient ASEAN community, so as to ensure that we maintain the peace and stability in the region. And finally, ASEAN appreciates the role played by its dialogue partners and external parties in the ASEAN community building process, and we look forward to the continued support and cooperation within the framework of ASEAN-led mechanism in all the three pillars of ASEAN community to complement regional efforts to strengthen a people-oriented, people-centered, and rules-based ASEAN. I thank you.
This one. Thank you very much, Hasnudin. I'm always struck by the extraordinary breadth of work involved in establishing a community and bringing it into being, truly comprehensive, right across so many sectors of society and the economy. But you made the point, which really resonated, which is that the most important underpinning factor of all the pillars is the people. And you said that people need the tools to move forward, and that governments on their own can't provide that. And I don't think any government anywhere can on its own provide that perspective and the different views and the different thoughts that governments need in order to make the best policy. You said that OECD and ERIA are able to help provide some of those tools, and we're now going to see in action ERIA in the person of Dr. Ponciano Intal providing some of the tools, telling us about the work that ERIA has been doing, about inspiring the ASEAN community towards 2025, going to cover both the economic and the socio-cultural communities. So I'll leave it to you. Tell us, enlighten us, inform us, and I think those here from governments are going to especially be taking home a lot of very valuable thoughts.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The previous session has forced me to reframe a bit of my presentation. How, in a world, in a period where you don't have intelligent figures who really can make the hard decisions, in a world where there's a great more pessimism, a greater protectionist mindset, how can we inspire an ASEAN community towards 2025? So I thought we need to reframe a bit. My view is this: regional integration by way of outward nationalism, enlightened and effective national leadership by way of regionalism. So, and I'd like to present the view that the two frameworks that we crafted under the ASEAN Rising for the AEC, as well as one on framing the ASEC post-2015, are a good way of reframing and convincing the public that this is the way forward and inspire that ASEAN community towards 2025. I do have a PowerPoint presentations. For 10 minutes, it's really much more. So I really have to flash many of these. Now let's check how do you do this here. All right. The most important is to present the view that actually Each and every ASEAN member state needs the ASEAN community, much more relevant now than before, because we do have a fast evolving Asia, and really what is an Asia century. Because East Asia is in the throes of that major economic transformation, and we need, if you want to have a rising ASEAN, vastly growing, integrated, contestable, competitive, dynamic, all the best words you can have of a responsive ASEAN. But the point is you all need to have structural, policy, and regulatory improvements if you want to have that rising ASEAN to go into fruition. But equally important is this, that a successful AEC actually demands also a successful ASCC, which of course is a social culture community, and really underpinned by that, a peaceful ASEAN and Asia. I want to deal with all of this practice, of a dramatic decline in productivity, poverty in the region, one of the best in the world, in the developing world. ASEAN is now the investment hotspot. I think in 2014 of $136 billion, definitely higher than China. High FDI intensity of ASEAN capital formation. There is progress in both the AEC, the midterm review on AEC implementation, tells a lot of that. There is also progress with respect to that of the ASCC, again the midterm review of these shows. If you notice, much higher scorecard for the ASCC, but that's because the activities are much more, easier and less difficult, and more one-off confidence building measures. But the way forward is to strengthen these, and I'm sure Larry here will highlight that once more. And of course, there is actually progress also with respect to the MPGs, which are very, very important with respect to our social culture community. There are nonetheless challenges, and there are some countries which are still off track for 2015. So what are the challenges, both present and for the future? First, we still have a large number of poor and marginally non-poor in most AMS. And actually hunger is still a problem in some member states. And millions don't have a full primary education. And social protection is still a challenge to a number of AMS. A mixed record on income inequality, and some AMS are actually very far from the social progress frontier. We still have to need to improve our competitiveness, especially vis-a-vis China and an emerging India. And clearly highlighted earlier the need for more resilient, definitely much more equitable, and really sustainable growing ASEAN. Of course, the question about natural disasters, pollution, and resource degradation are all serious problems. But as indicated also that a fully functioning AEC and ASCC are still unfinished. ASEAN right now is largely an institutional identity, and there is a need to make ASEAN deeply felt and owned by ASEAN peoples. Rahima here, I'm sure, will have that highlighted much more. So how can we do that? And these are sort of key pathways which are actually underpinned by the two frameworks that I'll present later. And this you still need a deeply integrated and contestable ASEAN economic community that is well integrated to the rest of the world. Second, and this is important about this value chain that Mari highlighted this morning, is to plug ASEAN deeply into those both network, global value chains and production network, and innovative world future. And of course that calls for robust productivity growth. You can't have a sustained growth without productivity growth. And definitely a question of inclusiveness, resilience, and sustainability in the development processes. Here, very important, got to highlight this, ensure good regulatory practice, responsive and stakeholder-centric regulatory management systems with competent and coordinated institutions. This is the next level for ASEAN, and definitely the need to deepen regional cooperation and interconnectedness towards a greater sense of belongingness, commonality, identity, and destiny. As the former US ambassador said, it's not 2015 that matters, but maintaining ambition and momentum. And I think if one were to read the one from Langkawi, is that momentum and ambition is the active expanding the ambition. Well, this is the framework that we have for the ASEAN Rising primarily on the economic side, but anchored on a responsive ASEAN. There's a lot about regulatory improvement and stakeholder-centric regulatory aspects. These are a framework that we are presenting to the ASEC of building the ASEAN socio-cultural community. Again, you do have all of those pillars that we've heard, but anchored on a people-oriented and a people-centered community mindset. All of these have got to be in that context of that mindset. I think that's what the ambassador highlighted. Now, I'll break some of these. How many more minutes do I have? Because at least 3. All right. Now, this one is on, as you can see, a whole long list of what needs to be done to have integrated and highly contestable ASEAN. And your PPTs, make one last part, give the details of these. But I'd like to give some observations. Some of the benefits for the national single window, which is very important with respect to trade facilitation, is actually process re-engineering and documentation harmonization in the preparatory stages. That's where a lot of the benefits are. And that's again is a regulatory improvement. Well, the best ways by which to address non-direct barriers of MTNs is actually good regulatory practice. Again, that is regulatory management systems. And on service liberalization, one that, again, Mari highlighted the need to make that competitive for the global value chain. You also need domestic regulatory improvement and process toward coherent, effective, and efficient regulations. So in reality, and this is one of the most difficult, post-2015, ASEAN needs to focus more on agreement on and cooperation in good regulatory practices, regulatory management systems, and responsive regulations. No if, no but. A lot of it is domestic, and that is how, as I said, this thing of reframing your regional integration by way of outward nationalism. The way to be competitive and be outward-oriented is have good governance. And much of that is good governance. In fact, what I've highlighted here is that much of AEC is really about governance reforms and institution building. These are reasons on terms of good regulatory practice and about benchmarks, importance of political commitment, the need for continuous public engagement of the special business groups. And here we're highlighting Bermuda. It's one of our studies here. And actually, again, part of this regionalism, the benefits of this, is how we learn from our colleagues, from our member states. And Bermuda and Malaysia has got good practices that other member states, especially Indonesia, must say, can learn a lot. I don't need to elaborate on this, but also the importance of an institution that is credible, technically competent, and unbiased and independent in really dealing with good regulatory practice. And so on. And also investing in a competent and engaged bureaucracy. Again, these are the next level of work that ASEAN member states have to do to really have a well-performing, deeper integration in the region. A lot of it is domestic, a lot of it ultimately benefits people. Because good governance, well-performing institutions meant for the world is actually best for people. While this one competitive and dynamic, agricultural clusters, and technology transfer, I don't need to elaborate on this, inclusive and caring ASEAN, a lot of it on the ASCC, the need for inclusive growth from agriculture to this periphery, it's about infrastructure, SME development, investing in workers. You need to have remunerative employment as a critical element of your poverty reduction. Investing in basic education and human resource, investing in health, strengthen social protection, given physical space. These are the things, the next round of challenges that, again, each member state in the region would have to deal with. Again, these are politically powerful messages. Whole things related to this resilient, sustainable ASEAN, engendering livable ASEAN cities, biodiversity, a new way of looking at natural resource management, all of it, by the way, linked in terms of engaging the communities, bringing the communities into that process. And that is what people-centered and people-oriented processes in the ASCC can come in. Again, energy security, about risk reduction, a lot of it discussed, but equally important is the fact that ASEAN is much more a construct. It has been a contract, actually, and the challenge is how can we have the we feeling, ours feeling, we are in this together feeling among the ASEAN peoples. And that includes, by the way, a deep appreciation of the cultural foundations. Take note of this, a cosmopolitan sense of ASEAN-ness. Historically, before the colonial period, ASEAN communities were as global as you can get. That's very cosmopolitan. Free flow of people everywhere. Of course, you're going to do that in the nation states. That's why you need purposeful initiatives. And there's so much in the ASCC, I think, which brings this out much more. Again, as I said, much of AC is governance reforms. And indeed, the blueprint is concerted governance reform for deeper economic integration. That is really regional integration by way of outward nationalism. Because governance reform is the best way of nationalism. Then, there is a great interdependence between AEC and ASCC. We tend to focus so much on AEC, but you cannot have a well-performing AEC without a deep sense of regionalism among the peoples. And that is why you need a successful ASCC. And I'm glad that for the post-2015, there's a strong imprint on what will be the next ASCC post-2015. Again, Larry Maramis has been there focusing a lot on this. So in a way, as I said, ASEAN is to create important ASCC blueprint as it does, or it has been, on AEC blueprint. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Tremendous. If I could suggest to everybody some homework, you all have that presentation in your packs, I believe. Seriously worth a deep read and a deep think. So much material there, and I'm only sorry we didn't have more time to cover it. But thank you so very much. Now moving on to Dr. Chandra, who we'd just like to ask you basically to reflect on what you've heard. A couple of questions, I suppose, I have for you that you might like to cover or not. It really doesn't matter. But taking two of your different hats. So one was the comment that Dr. Intal just made that all business is local. All business is local. And so what we're wondering is wearing your ASEAN back hat, how business is feeling about the ASEAN economic community, the ASEAN community. How do they feel about the ambition? How do they feel about the speed? What do they think needs to be done? Are they scared about it? You know, what is business feeling? The other thing is, I was looking at your CV and noticed that you had expertise on political economy and regional integration. And that's come up quite a lot today. Professor Pangestu talked about how to sell the positives of openness. Dr. Intal just said, you know, a lot of this is domestic, and posed the idea of outward nationalism, and said that the basis for a lot of this is governance reforms. But as we all know, governance reforms are actually really difficult to do, whether it's because people fear change, they fear loss, and there are so many vested interests involved, and the need for leadership. So my second question to you, but do take anything you want really, is, you know, what's your take on the political economy of regional integration now, as we're facing the birth of the ASEAN community, and indeed where it's heading in the next 10 years, in a context where right now we do seem to have increasing protectionism? Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Good morning, everyone, Excellencies. Chandra, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to extend our thanks to ERIA and OECD for extending this kind of invitation to ASEAN Park. And on the outside, I would also like to thank you, express our appreciation to ERIA, who has been our research partner, one of our research partners, who has been supporting many of our ASEAN Park activities over the years, including the submission of our recent report to ASEAN leaders 2015. So I realized that we are running a bit behind schedule, so I'll try to be quite brief, and maybe later on I will touch upon, cover a bit of some of the questions that you raised, Madam Ambassador. But let me just focus on one thing actually. This is the recent report that ASEAN Park submitted to ASEAN leaders during the 26th ASEAN Summit in this last week. So the key theme of our report this year is actually focused on the business for the people. Basically, the report is focusing on issues relevant to ASEAN economic community building and the region's population as a whole. The report actually addressing two issues. One is low-hanging fruits, that is some of the short-term key deliverables that ASEAN can achieve between now until the end of 2015, and of course the post-2015 agenda. Now, some of the short-term deliverables that we address in our report to ASEAN leaders are actually also applicable to post-2015. So I'll just highlight some of the key areas that we think were relevant in the discussion. First, key issues that key issues that we push forward, and also I think this is in line with what ERIA has been saying the last couple of years, is of course the removal of non-tariff measures and non-tariff barriers. Now, I understand that one of ERIA's studies in the past already mentioned that NTMs can sometimes be justified for safety and protection purposes. But we do agree with the analysis that of ERIA that the issue is how ASEAN can use it more strategically, so it can benefit the rest of the region. And also, I think we also think that the ASEAN also need to find ways to ensure that NTMs do not distort trade and investment. Second short-term key deliverables that we highlighted during our submission to our interface with ASEAN leader was on the PIS, or the priority integration sectors of ASEAN. Now, this is one of the things that has been relatively long forgotten. Actually, it's an initiative launched by ASEAN in 2003, but now somehow it was a bit here and there. I mean, it's not very clear what the progress is and stuff like that. ASEAN Park actually has a mandate to actually provide private sector feedback and also identify areas, priority areas for consideration for ASEAN leader. And we think that we need to also get back to our some of the original initiatives that has been pursued by ASEAN. And one of these, of course, the priority integration sectors. Now, key with the priority integration sectors is that I think there has to be a need for ASEAN to carry out a comprehensive review and also publication and extensive report on the progress of the priority integration sector. As I said before, the information concerning priority integration sector has been scattered all over the place, and to date, I think only a couple of sectors actually advanced quite well in terms of integrating the region as a whole. Now, another component that is important within the priority integration sector is that we need to actually reorient the policy around BIS. Now, our understanding with the priority integration sector, it is meant to be integrating ASEAN economy. Fact of the matter is that, as I think Hasnudin this morning mentioned, that actually the overall trade between ASEAN and non-ASEAN ASEAN countries are actually excelling beyond more than intra-ASEAN trade. So that there must be something wrong with the way we conduct our priority integration sectors, and I think it's quite important for ASEAN to address this in the post-2015. I understand, I think there is also a new term being used to refer to BIS, post-2015, is it? Enhanced sectoral integration or something, but I'm not sure whether this is as a strategy. Okay. Yeah. So that's about BIS. And then also, I think key important short-term deliverable the ASEAN can attempt to achieve between now until the end of 2015, and also in line with our motto this year, business for the people, is that we think that ASEAN need to have a sustainable financial support system to support the advancement of economic integration in ASEAN. And we came up with the ideas such as the financial and capital market arrangement to develop infrastructure in the region, and also the establishment of MSMEs bank. Now, I know that ASEAN has been talking a lot about SME banks, but since a couple of years ago, ASEAN Bank has pushed for this idea of actually trying to incorporate this another layer of economic actors, the micro, which is also make up the bulk of economic players in ASEAN. Now, we understand that there might be some resistance among some member countries in realizing these MSME banks, but the idea is to assist ASEAN MSMEs to have better access to finance, which remains to be a quite critical problem in the region. Now, our idea is that not so much that for ASEAN to finance the bank and so on and so forth, but we actually encourage ASEAN member states to allow private sector participation in providing capital for the bank. But of course, we will still need the ASEAN governments to help facilitate the formation of this MSME bank. Now, on the post-2015, issues. Now, actually, I'd like to think that the businesses in the region are starting to become more sensitive on the issues, on the ground. So, as far as the ASEAN Bank is concerned, at least we are now trying to also not only covering what I would refer to as traditional economic issues such as non-tariff barriers, non-tariff measures, and so on and so forth. For example, some of our recommendations to ASEAN leaders is that we also call for the mainstreaming of responsible business practice. We take into account the achievement that ASEAN has already achieved in relation to coming out with a study on the business and human rights, and also a number of international standards that are already in place, such as ISO 26000, UN Global Compact, UN Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights, and so on and so forth. But we still think that the ASEAN as a whole to help this concept to be mainstreamed in all ASEAN policies. Secondly, with regard to post-2015, I think in line with what Dr. Intal already mentioned about more engagement and so on and so forth, we also call for ASEAN to start getting closer to the people. Now, just before our meeting with the ASEAN leaders, actually, our chair was invited to speak at the ASEAN People's Forum, and naturally, during that forum, because I was informed that he was attacked a lot, But constructively, of course, we find these inputs, inputs to be quite meaningful. And in fact, for your information, ASEAN Bank intends to actually organize engagement with the civil society organization so that we can better understand. And also you mentioned about how AEC can link up with ASCC. I think this is one of the way. And then also during that interface between engagement between civil society and private sector, I think one thing that was actually quite appearing quite a lot is the issue of workers' rights and obligation. And it's also part of our recommendation to ASEAN leaders this year. And we believe that ASEAN needs to have a code of conduct on responsibility and obligation that are in line with decent work principles. Now, we are also highlighting the issues that is quite prevalent in the region at the moment, migrant labors. Now, this is, of course, ASEAN has been covering issues like movement of labor and so on and so forth on skilled labors, of course. But the majority, the fact of the matter, the majority of labor migrants in the regions are, unskilled. So this has to be addressed. And also on the migrant in relation to the AEC and also in relation to migrant laborers, we also call for ASEAN to involve private sector more in the process of determining skill standards and cross-border skill recognition. Finally, another thing that we have been pushing ASEAN to do the last couple of years is that the inclusion of women entrepreneurs under the economic pillars of ASEAN. We know for certain impact of economic integration might affect men and women differently because of issues such as cultural and so on and so forth. So we think that this is a key imperative for ASEAN to do in post-2015. One final note about post-2015. I think this is also highlighted by our chairman during our interface with ASEAN leader, is that the process of drafting of the post-2015 document needs to be more transparent, needs to be made more transparent. I mean, it's true that the ASEAN Bank, for instance, has been consulted, but it tends to be a bit ad hoc and one-off type of things. I think this kind of things needs to be done more regularly. And also I think we think also that other stakeholders, particularly with the civil society and other groups, needs to be taken into account in the engagement process as well. One thing that we need to note is that so far, in comparison to other pillar of ASEAN cooperation, it appears that AEC has been the most difficult to penetrate by different states. I mean, we have been privileged as a private sector being engaged with. We appreciate that, but I think if we have to address some of the challenges that Dr. Intal already pointed out earlier on about the inequality, and so on and so forth. This kind of engagement needs to be enhanced and institutionalized. I think I'll leave it at that, and hopefully maybe I'll touch upon your question. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we don't have much, if any. Do we have any time? Who am I looking for? We've got 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Okay, that's good, because I have one question, and I would like each of you to take 1 minute to answer it, not more. And it's a question inspired by the title, inspiring indeed, towards 2025. If you can put yourself in 2025, what does the ASEAN community look like then? And what does it look like, what does it feel like for the people? How have lives changed? Maybe how has business changed? How are things different in ASEAN in 2025? Who'd like to start that one?
Thank you, Zephyr. You want a short or long answer? I think when we are looking at 2025, I mean, as I said, ASEAN is on the right trajectory to move there. But again, we are in a world where uncertainty is very much the order of the day now. But let us not be dampened by this. Let us look at the bigger picture. I think come 2025, or 10 years from now, I believe that ASEAN will be a much more integrated region that will help, to bring the improvement in the lives of the people, more enhanced institutional linkages within ASEAN, and of course with our dialogue partners. You know, I think, let us put it this way, question for all of us. What if there is no ASEAN? You know, can we imagine how the situation in the region will be? And I hope the continuing peaceful stability and prosperity of the region will be safeguarded by all of us, including our friends from outside the region, so that we can, what do you call this, reap the benefits of the ASEAN community in 2050. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A fascinating question is that counter-proposal, you know, what if there were no ASEAN? I'm sure that could be the basis of a very interesting thesis at some point, but it's a really important one. Dr. Intal.
I guess I just want to highlight targets that we're proposing for 2025, 2030 in both the EEC as well as the SEC. 0 extreme poverty, no hunger, better schooling and health status, much better physical connectivity, better logistics, a higher share of global FDI, all AMS within the top third of the ease of doing business, as well as that of the Global Competitiveness Index. That's what we need, all of that, to have a really, really nice, livable ASEAN region.
Well, that's a great vision and a great set of challenges. Now, Dr. Chandra gave us a challenge, which was to make the post-2015 drafting more transparent, which is an interesting question, because I've got to confess that as a dialogue partner, we're very interested to know what's going on in there too. But how do you see 2025?
Well, being a ASEAN idealist, I would say, I would want ASEAN to be a more united entities by then. I think we need, hopefully, that ASEAN member states start looking beyond national interests and actually start purely looking as one and having a regional interest, being discussed.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm afraid we've gone slightly over time, and I'm sorry about that, but we'll draw this to a close now. As I said, I do think it was a very interesting perspective of views from government, from business, from academia. And there are many, many more connections between ERIA, OECD, ASEAN, and regional activities that have even come out here today. I should have commented, actually, that there was very good cooperation between ASEAN BAC and the OECD's Business and Industry Advisory Council recently over the statement that went to the Southeast Asian Regional Programme event that happened in March. So what we see is, I think, at the core of the ASEAN Centre, many more people, bodies and organisations who are all pushing in the same direction, guided by that ASEAN centrality, but everybody urging ASEAN along to fulfil that wonderful vision of 2025 that we've just heard about. I would like to thank my speakers very much. I think it's been a very interesting session. Thank you.